Welcome to the Accounting Technology Lab, sponsored by CPA Practice Advisor, with your hosts, Randy Johnston and Brian Tankersley. Hi, everybody. It's Brian, working hard at the lab today, but I thought I would let you know that I do have a quick announcement. We have a giveaway. We're going to be giving away one Ricoh ScanSnap IX 2500 Receipt Edition. We're going to make the drawing right after April 30th. No purchase required. Suggested retail value $599. This is has one-touch simplicity, and our friends at Ricoh graciously have provided it to us. With automatic invoice OCR, detachable receipt guide for small and curl documents, and lightning fast 45-page-a-minute duplex scanning. It transforms paperwork into clean, searchable digital data in seconds. If you want to register, it's cpate.ch/scansnap. The rules are at cpate.ch/rules, and the privacy policy is at cpate.ch/scanner-privacy. And for those of you attending the video version of this, I've actually put on the screen now a QR code that you can capture and use to register for the scanner giveaway. Again, we're giving one away. We're going to give it away again right after April 30th, and again, you must be an accounting professional to win. All the rules again are at cpate.ch/rules. So anyway, with that, thanks for joining us, and here we are back in the lab.
Welcome to the Accounting Technology Lab. I'm with my co-host Brian Tankersley, and I'm Randy Johnston, wanting to talk to you today about generative AI in your practice. Now, generative AI has had a lot of traffic over the last 3.5 years or something like that. And what we wanted to do was just discuss where AI is appearing and how it's appearing and how you might make decisions going forward for your use of AI. And you're going to discover in our discussion with you today that we think there's multiple ways that you can consider this. And not everything is a large language model. In other words, it's not all OpenAI, ChatGPT, or Claude, or Copilot, or Gemini, or whatever you think is the greatest thing since sliced bread. So, Brian, how would you like to proceed with our listeners today?
Well, I think it's important to understand here that this is going to be an evolution that everybody's going to go through and how they work with things. Just like when you think about how we went from working papers where we had the reinforcers around the two-hole punch things at the top and all of that. We used to compete. We used to try to figure out what the best pencil was and what the best eraser was. Now I don't know that I have any mechanical pencils left in my desk anymore. So it's really a different tool set, but it took quite a bit of evolution to go through there. The thing here is that there are things that AI can do for you today, and we encourage you to try to check those things out. Drafting emails, summarizing large documents where you can go back and have human in the loop to check them. You can go through and again use it for optical character recognition. You can, in particular in marketing, in areas where you can use generative systems to clean up the writing and things. You and I've used Grammarly for years now. You can also use some of these tools with bank feeds and update information. Although we got to be very careful with privacy here. Okay, so we don't. We need to again be very careful there. And we have these bots in here that again we set up. And again, we look at Claude Cowork and the forthcoming Copilot bots, as well as OpenClaw. And these tools can actually take actions inside of things. I was actually looking at an extension for OpenClaw yesterday that would actually go in and do maintenance on Unix systems, like installing updates and things like that. So I found it it's very interesting, some of the things that can be automated now that we again haven't had. Now,
Before you leave that thought behind, I was actually reflecting on self-maintenance in Star Trek or Star Wars. And realistically, agents are probably one of the key things that you'll have to watch for. We began talking to you over a year ago about how agents could be used. You're going to find the agents you see this year more sophisticated than the agents of the past. So, all this maintenance and updates, again, we've got to watch what we allow the agents to do because they are capable of doing real transactions like transferring money.
Yeah, so they can create real damage if we, with this. But there are certain things that you can have them do. You can have them go through and summarize your inbound emails in the morning, like I do with Claude. Every morning at 8 o'clock, it goes in and summarizes the inbound emails that have come and the ones I haven't responded to from yesterday, and those things to try to help me manage this. We also, though, we're seeing a revolution in tax research, whether it's CoCounsel or whether it's Blue Jay or whether it's the Walters Kluwer tools. We've got a wide range of tools in here that are taking new approaches with this. Research where we used to have a senior tax manager would take, or again a technical tax director. We would have those people doing heavy duty research, and then they would go in and if you wanted to get an answer to a question, it would take half a day and cost you a couple $1,000s at standard rates. Now when we're looking at this, we can go in and have the AI do the first cut at it, and then we can have those people look at it and see if that makes sense to them, and then they can check the things that don't seem right and make sure that there aren't big holes in this. So
One of the
again,
tricks when you're doing that is to actually cite original resources, and you can ask for that. But we've noticed, particularly as I just watched the evolution in Thomson Reuters Checkpoint Edge CoCounsel to their latest release of CoCounsel Tax, how much more sophistication is in that platform 18 months later. It's a stunning amount of progress, but to me, still going back to original IRS sightings, original regulation sightings, and so forth, that helps minimize some of the hallucination. But this human in the loop check is still, in my mind, mandatory. I don't think any of these tools are good enough today. You can turn them loose. Now, the vendors are trying to tell me they are. I'm just not quite that comfortable yet.
yeah, the vendors don't have to pay the malpractice premiums after you make a mistake. So there's that. Um, okay, so the next one is going to be we're going to talk a little bit about audits. And there are a lot of audit tools out there that will, again, like Data Snipper and Teammate Document Managing, that will match things up, or tools that will scan the whole ledger, like MindBridge, or you have data binding tools like Celonis that you can use against the enterprise processes, the automation that people have set up. You can get robotic process automation as well as AI to do the data entry. Again, you can also do real-time insights. You look at what's happened with ACL, and ACL has repurposed itself from an audit tool to now a GRC tool, where it's doing continuous monitoring so that you can catch things as they're happening before they turn into something that's to the point where it causes you to have a qualified opinion, or to have audit findings. You can catch them before they've grown to that level of magnitude. We can also use things to send better client notes. So again, the you can take tax law and use tools like Ready to Advise to make things for a non-expert. You can have AI write financial analysis and again explain things in human terms. One of the most dangerous things about client accounting services is our clients may not understand their financial statements, and so we really have to teach them in here. Um,
And
Copilot.
one of the comments I'll make here, which you can hear in a separate accounting technology lab from the accelerator, is there are new generation products like Ping Assistant that not only do transcription and take notes, but also provide insights. And, one of the most common questions that I've answered in the last 90, 120 days is talk to me about the security of the AI transcription tools. What can we use? And of course, Brian and I both use transcription tools. This podcast, for example, has been processed by Otter for some time. We recognize that it doesn't always get all the words right, but it sure beats trying to sit down and transcribe it like you did in the old days. But tools like Ping Assistant really do provide better client notes much faster in a much superior way.
Yeah, yeah. So, um, there are a lot of things here, but again, these you still have to put the human in the loop because I find that as good as Otter is, when we put this thing out, it will get things wrong, and I will correct some of them, and some of them I will just let sail through, knowing that it's machine transcription. But it takes something that would easily take an hour per episode to create a transcript off of this, and it does it pretty much instantly in the background while I'm doing other things. You also do want to take the busy work out of your practice. So this auto nag thing that we talk about, tools like Truss and KVV can handle this document chasing for you. Lisio does that. Most of the tools will do the follow up in here. You can also have agents to file your selected engagement letters as they come in, and we're seeing more and more products come out with tools that will automatically file those things. We have dashboard statuses to show you what's happening so you can see what's on fire in here. And again, there's when a client uploads something, you can have it notify you immediately and set off some triggers. Um,
And Brian
again,
and I were lucky enough earlier this week to have a in-depth discussion about how things are classified and filed and what makes sense and what doesn't make sense. And what we're trying to do with vendors who are creating these products is to give them enough insights that they can understand what you need to do your work in a practical way day after day. And I think the early versions of these will be good, but the later versions will be even better. But I don't think it's worth waiting for the later versions based on the productivity that you can gain right now. So we're going to go through a pretty radical transition in my mind on both document management and workflow. And realistically, this taking the busy work out of the practice is such a big advance.
Agreed. We also do want to keep our data safe, though. So we do want to keep our PII away from the public chatbots. Again, the enterprise plans typically will exclude the AI data getting trained in here. The other thing to remember here, by the way, is again with the legal profession, the courts have said that the data that you put into these large language models publicly is now discoverable. And so there's a whole new compliance challenge here. And so the question is, do you want to put these things on proprietary models or proprietary instances of models like those you can do in Azure? Again, the thing about this is that it is important that you understand the risks and the regulatory risks, and that again you don't make catastrophic mistakes that cause things to be discoverable either in litigation support or in, God forbid, in litigation against you.
Yeah. So one of my learnings in the past few weeks, but I kind of knew this, I just want to call it out for you. Trying to keep the data safe from the AI engines is one of the advantages of Microsoft's Copilot. It does take some setup and there's some tagging and there's misunderstanding between advanced levels of Microsoft 365, like E5 being required for purview and the tagging, versus business premium, sophisticated enough to really handle most firms' needs. Further, the tagging efforts are labor intensive today and very error prone. So, one firm that I've had the privilege of talking to in the past week or so said, look, we went to all this effort to tag everything, and when we turned it on for tax season, nobody could get any work done. And so we had to turn it all back off. So, I want you to understand that there are vendors who will try to come to you to talk about AI strategies and data safety, and they talk a good game, but could put you at risk on the other side of productivity when they're trying to get safety. We've had that discussion in prior podcasts with you. There's always a compromise between ease of use and security. And generally, when it's easy to use, it's not very secure. And if you make it too darn hard to use, it's secure, but nobody can get anything done.
Yeah. But we also do need to, you've said for 15 or 20 years now that if you have an accountant keying in data, you have a broken process. And I think, this is one of the areas that we've got to really hammer on now because a lot of you are still keying in data. So, again, again, you can let Makers Hub AI or Dex or others get the information in. There are general ledger platforms like Digits that will actually ingest invoices, extract all the information. If you haven't seen the payables infrastructure in Digits, the bill pay in there, it's actually very elegant the way it's been done. Again, letting again, focusing on the errors that the system flags and letting again, the things, we're far enough into this journey with OCR and data entry that we can almost start to let some of the systems run on near autopilot where the system is checking itself. But again, you can do this on bills and again, you can try this and see how it works. Many of you already do hands-off processing on bills with your light bill or your water bill, where you just set it up to automatically draft your account every month, as opposed to going in and having to transmit the money to them in here.
Yeah, so on this point, though, most of you are aware now that unfortunately, BotKeeper did fail, and that was really sad in my mind. But I believe that there is a piece of learning from Enrico Palmero. Again, I like Enrico well, but he said, look, our product was working. We put a lot of money to make it into the product to make it work, but we started having a lot of merger acquisitions. And when people started to consolidate, the number of licenses and subscriptions that we had dropped precipitously. And one of the things I asked you to begin considering as far back as 2019 was to control your SaaS subscriptions. And so you'll continue to hear about SaaS apocalypse. And I'm not sure that BotKeeper didn't really fall prey to merger acquisition and this constriction of SaaS licensing. But was it working? Yes. And were they able to make it work well? Yes. And when I look at other vendors like MakersHub.ai, their product is working beautifully. So the question will become, how much automation can you throw at this, and how much of your regular labor can you take out of your transaction processing in tax and in audit and in client accounting services Brian has laid out so far?
Now, we also do need to think about this. We just had one of the big four actually ask for a reduction in fees because of the automation that was being deployed by their external auditor. We do need to think about value pricing in here. Ed Kless and Ron Baker have been beating the drum against the billable hour for 20 or 30 years that I know of. And as we think about this now, switching to flat fees is again a way to keep things steady as you implement more and more technology. You also want to sell your expertise, not your calendar. And again, reward your team for getting things right as opposed to just hours. There are things other than hours that are important that need to be rewarded. And again, when we're looking at AI and these technological changes, people are going to make mistakes. Okay. And we have to make sure that we don't crush people that make mistakes. If they're doing them in good faith and their thought process is correct, we still want to do an after action analysis to see what we got right and what we didn't. But again, if you come down too hard on people that make those mistakes, again, to you want to have your AI talk like a tax partner. The industry context is going to come first. So again, you want to make sure you've got the right wording in here. You also want to set length limits so that things get boiled down to a certain number of things. Don't take the first draft. Again, I've used multiple engines to clean up analyses and things in here. Again, if I get two or three things I don't like out of one engine, I quite often will switch. You also can upload PDFs or other things to keep things factual. So I will tell you that I often upload documents for context. Like when I'm coming up with names for courses, I'll quite often upload an outline for the course and then let it come up with something, but after it's analyzed the text or Word document that has the things we're going to talk about, and it generally does a better job as a result. So again, that's one way to put in here. You do want to have that human in the loop. The tax code is your source of truth, so you want to verify every site in here. You can use again, you can use tools like co-counsel tax and answer connect. Again, you can use them to double check claims that you have other places. But you do need a human being to look over things first. And again, there are places where things make mistakes. I was like I mentioned in a previous podcast, one of the things that I was actually working on yesterday was I was setting up an instance of Libre Chat, which is an open source tool that you can use to work with multiple large language models, and it kind of gives you an infrastructure where you only have to key the data in once, and you can send it to multiple models and try it out different places and do more sophisticated things. So I was actually working on this, and I asked it a simple question: what were the final placements in the Drum Corps International Finals of Valley Fever for all 7 years of its existence from 1979 to 1986? Okay, so I asked that. Notice there's 8 years in there, but they didn't field a core in 1985, and so there were 7 years that they existed. Well, every single engine made up things in there. Nobody got me the right answer. The best answer I got was, I can't figure this out. And you're going to have to look up, here's some sources where you might go to find this, because I can't do this. But it's important here because that's a very arcane piece of knowledge that I had about some of that information. And I think it's important for everybody to understand that um, this thing that we're doing here, it will especially if you're dealing with art, with the less information there is on it, the more likely it's going to blow it big time. Three different things made up facts in front of me, and I was looking at it going, wow, that's hallucination in action.
Well, Brian, this is too much information for our listeners, but I just can't resist today because we had the good fortune of attending grandson's birthday this week. And I'm going to be specific, which maybe is also something I shouldn't do, but 10th birthday this week. And I pulled him aside and said, 10th birthday is a big deal. Obviously, Artemis launched on your 10th birthday. You'll remember that forever. But I said, I personally remember my 10th birthday because I got to go to the National Guard Armory and learn to twirl a rifle with the Skyriders Drum Corps. So
Yeah.
that's what I was doing on my 10th birthday. And he kind of looked at me and said, what's twirling a rifle? But for some of our listeners that have seen these, performance groups, twirling batons and rifles and so forth, I actually got to learn to do that on my 10th birthday. So how many people, though, would know Skyriders? And they are performing this summer here in my hometown.
Well, and those rifles are dangerous. I mean, if you hit yourself in the head, you can really, you can go to the hospital. It's pretty serious stuff.
It explains
So
a lot, doesn't it?
yeah, well, I say, I played drums, so I hit my head different ways, but anyway, cool. So again, you also want to keep your firm running smoothly, so you can use AI to kind of monitor things in here. You can check BI or ProStaff to catch those log jams, or again, we can look at there's all manner of tools you can look at. Historical data, again, is your crystal ball. You can look at the AI scheduling. There's the good scheduling tools that are out there, like Empire Suite, and others that are in the space. Many of them use linear programming and other approaches. So AI is helpful. But again, you look at the tax scheduling, for example, that you have in some of these engines, and again, AI can help, but it may not be a replacement. It's also important here to look at crunch times and see who's struggling, and see those tsunamis that people are about to experience that nobody else knows about, so you can again avert the disaster that's coming.
And we're looking for AI to assist with these things, but there is some tone of knowledge that the scheduling products still struggle with. And I think it might be, there's too many variables for them to process through AI. They're getting better, not saying they aren't, but again, you think about what you know and what you do when you're scheduling tax or audit teams.
Randy, I think this really brings us to, we've got some additional things we could talk about, but I think this kind of brings us to again, to kind of a wrap up on this episode. So again, to get the tools in your daily workflow, it's like exercise. You have to make yourself do it, and you will not like it at the beginning, like exercise. Okay. But you have to fit it in. Let Copilot draft your emails. Run QuickBooks AI sorting on a few clients. Try a client or two on Digits or Willet or Rillet, or some of the other AI based engines. Ask your tech savvy staff for honest feedback before you buy licenses. So try it out with some people, see what happens. Are your clients going to like this or not? I don't know. If you're doing litigation support, they may not like the AI use of AI, or if they're in a particularly litigious industry like handgun manufacturing or something, this may not be a place where it fits. Again, check in every few months, see what's going on. And again, if a tool's not saving time, stop using it. Similarly, talk to other people in the industry and see where you can make progress. What kind of approaches they're using that are making things. And with that, Randy, I'll turn it back over to you to bring us home.
Well, this is pretty straightforward because, your comment is, don't just stand there, go do something. And of course, Brian and I are both running ergonomic devices that monitor us called Deep Care. And my Deep Care ergonomic device is saying it's time to stand up. So, in any case, we'll talk about Deep Care in another episode, but we wanted to give you an overview of what we believe is the state of AI adoption, but we have more to come in future accounting technology labs. We'll talk to you again real soon. Good day.
Thank you for sharing your time with us. We'll be back next Saturday with a new episode of the Technology Lab from CPA Practice Advisor. Have a great week.